Hola, and welcome to today's
Hola.
episode of Eastern Current, where we're going to be talking about Spanish mackerel. We're excited about this episode, and I'm also excited I just started a podcast episode without going, what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Eastern Current, because that's every single one of them. But guys, thanks for checking it out. We've got a sideways phone over here as well, so you can check it out on Instagram. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that pans out. But there's a lot of people that don't have Facebook that want to watch it as well. One thing that I've actually learned, if you just Google, they started doing this with since there was so much live stuff going on with the pandemic, that if you just Google the Facebook group, so say you just Google Eastern Current, you can click on it and watch a live stream on there even without a Facebook page. So that's
nice.
pretty cool. So if you're watching on Instagram, that's something you can give a shot. But we're going to talk with Ray today about Spanish mackerel fishing, but we're excited to be live again with y'all. We haven't done this in a while. We had, 3 episodes in a row drop on us because the Wi-Fi was so bad once this all started. So hopefully bear with us. This will work out, and we'll be able to stay live with y'all for around an hour. But we're stoked to be here.
What number is this?
This is 58, I think,
Yeah.
and we got a bunch in the bank ready to go that I pre-recorded. But 58. 58th episode, so thanks for tuning in.
A lot of good info.
Some good info, yeah. If you go back and study it all, you might be able to catch some fish, hopefully. That's kind of the goal. But, Ray, thanks for joining us.
No, thank you guys for having me again.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate it. It's always
Definitely.
fun.
You're a hot topic, man. Catching the trout, catching the Spanish. I mean, I was in Weldon striper fishing, and I was seeing the post that you have used Spanish fishing. I was like, I thought you had to go to Weldon to catch numbers like that in the spring. But man, you've been crushing them. So
It's been a good year.
the nearshore stuff's been solid all spring. Like
Yeah.
the bonita, the Spanish mackerel, even the like little snake kings are pretty thick right now, I've heard. And, so cool.
We caught quite a few of legal kings the other day.
Did you?
Yeah, trolling Clark spoons. I mean,
Okay.
Really?
nice ones. Yeah, 25, 26 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Right
mean, you
on.
hit them and it's like, okay, it's something different.
Yeah.
Legal king, nice little bonus,
For sure.
I don't target them that much, but yeah,
Yeah.
they're there.
That's been every year. It's like I get this hankering to like learn to do something new, and this year it's been like live baiting for kings. It's
Yeah.
so different than what I do, but I'm like, that's all I've been thinking about. Is like I want to do some more live baiting for king mackerel, but it's fun to just learn. It's just different than anything I've done, and I think that's what's cool. Is like growing as an angler, like learning new tactics and new ways to fish for fish is always fun. But Cameron, you went cobia fishing the other day, right?
I did.
You caught a bunch, right?
No, yeah, like 15, 20.
Nice.
No, we didn't see any. But any day now, I would think.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
any day now.
Y'all had a bunch of bait, right?
We went the other day.
We saw a bunch of bait. We saw a lot of schools of threadfin.
Gotcha.
But didn't see any menhaden. And this threadfin moves kind of
It
quickly.
was all sharks for us. Yeah,
Yeah.
we saw a lot of sharks.
Yeah.
There was a
sharks.
school of cobia seen off of New River Inlet a week and a half ago when we were out there.
Right on.
They were probably another few miles out from where we were fishing, and I was working the bait balls. We were casting to really big Spanish that day. But yeah, that's the only ones I've heard of. I haven't seen one myself, but definitely ready for them if they
Yeah.
show up.
Definitely.
Even in the Outer Banks, I think it's started fairly slow.
Yeah, it has. I've seen some good posts from Matt and stuff. They started to get into them a little bit, but nothing crazy. I always get caught with my pants down early, like out there Spanish fishing or something, and they don't have a jig tied up, and
Yeah.
one swims by the boat, and you're like, oh, trying to like reel in a Clark spoon and pitch it over there.
I do better in flounder season with them. I
Yeah.
mean, that's when I see them when I'm over structure on the edge of structure with the trolling motor down that's calm and you're jigging for flounder and you just happen to look back behind the boat and there's one back behind the boat.
Just head in the prop.
Yep. Just looking at it.
Yeah.
It's so common to see that. So now I'm watching the back of the boat while I'm flounder fishing.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching the motor pee to make sure it's still peeing so I don't overheat,
Do
That's
they
awesome.
ever follow the flounder up?
I've never seen them do that. I've seen
I've
them.
caught one like that.
I've seen them follow. Like I remember having them. You're putting a bait out and they're trying to get trolling live baiting kings or trolling ballyhoo. You're putting the bait out and they'll come up from under the boat and try to grab it. And I've looked at I pull it up like drop the thing. I pull it up like it's a shark. I mean, first reaction on a big one is you see his head first and you just pull it up like it's a shark and you look back and it's Kobe and you're dropping it back to him. No, take it. I've caught more like that live bait and kings where they've come from under the boat than I have any other way.
You always hear like the first guys that catch them good is like somebody's out live baiting for kings one day.
That's how you get them.
Five
Yeah,
or six, like that.
We had was it last year that we caught 2 off Wrightsville?
Yeah, just Yeah,
This
we
was-
caught one
this
just
is a
blind casting
crazy
bucktails
story.
and just jigging them. Oh yeah. Tell the
This is
story real
like
quick,
the-
and then we'll jump into Spanish.
Never seen something like this before. Yeah, we were out just like bottom fishing on a wreck, and right when we set down the anchor, I saw this huge shark swim through the waves. Or like, it's fairly choppy.
Big tiger.
Huge tiger shark, and with two big black blobs swimming with it, and I was like, "That's cobia." And then the shark kind of disappeared, and we threw out. We had kept a false albacore for some reason, and I think we were gonna keep it for bait. And we kind of cut it up and put it on a string behind the boat. The tiger shark comes up behind the boat and has two cobia just laying on its back.
That was sick.
Judd caught one right off the back of a tiger
Oh, wow.
shark, which is pretty
Right behind the
sweet.
boat.
Yeah.
That was sweet.
And the tiger shark came up and ate that false albacore and just pulled it off the string.
Some of that stuff you only see on occasion.
I know, man. That's
That's cool.
That's the cool stuff. But,
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Well, let's jump into Spanish mackerel fishing, man. It's a really awesome opportunity for people to get out and just catch a bunch of fish and have a fun time. Take the family out, and for those of you that have boats, this is great to listen to. And for those of you that don't, you can get an idea of if you come out with Ray, like what you can do on a day of Spanish mackerel fishing here. And so, kind of give us. You don't need to give us your backstory because you've been on a bunch of podcasts, but let's hear about Spanish fishing. Kind of start at the beginning of like, all right, the fish get here in the spring. What's your initial I'm going out to look for Spanish mackerel. You don't know where to go.
Well, like you
I'm
were
gonna go out
talking
to
about
fish.
just a minute ago, and I'll get into that. But I mean, without going into a lot of background, what you were talking about a minute ago of the change and diversity, and I love changing with the seasons.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Keeps
just
it fresh.
fish for one fish. I mean, I got into this because I was bored with what I was doing, and the whole point for me is to be able to change with the seasons and go with the flow. And just like martins show up every year and the flowers come up every year.
Right.
When my martins show up, I'm fishing for a certain fish. That marks this time for me. And back in the day when the dogwoods would bloom, all right, let's go brim fishing. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
but getting back to brim fishing back in the day, I mean, that's Spanish fishing for me.
Yeah.
It was something I did as a kid that we learned how to do and put food on the table. And I've said this before, like it was a good way to go out and catch a lot of fish for the table. And we didn't grow up with a lot of money, but we didn't know it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're coming home and eating those and frying them up and
Heck yeah.
and cooking them, I mean, it was that whole joke, like we used to say, wonder what the poor folks are doing. So, we lived good. I mean, as Mom used to say, we're rich. I mean,
Yeah.
didn't have a dime to our name. But, I like to change with the season. Spanish is a good fish. I got away from them for a long time. When I started chartering, I realized, hey, the things that I take for granted in fishing, sometimes people who have never been, that's something that is enjoyable to them.
Definitely.
And especially kids or people who lack a lot of skill, you control and you can put numbers in the boat. You can send them home with some fish.
Yeah.
It's a federally regulated species that is in good shape, so you don't have to feel bad about taking a bunch of them. I still preach conservation, but at the same time, it's not bad to take a limit of Spanish.
Yeah.
And the numbers show that. I mean, we hit them hard every year, and every year they come back. And when if there's ever a time where they're in trouble, we'll address it then. But so far, this is our fish right now in North Carolina, especially the spring run. I love it. This first few weeks of it is amazing. You work the bait balls. There's tricks you can do to catch bigger fish that I've learned over the years. There's ways to catch numbers and there's ways to catch big ones.
Yeah.
And it's two different styles of fishing as a general rule. But it's just a great way to. I got into it because it was an easy way to fish, to put a lot of fish in the boat as a kid. And like I said, when I started chartering, I realized real quick, hey, this is a great way to take people out and
Definitely.
show them a good time. I mean, that people have never seen the ocean before.
Yeah.
That they're amazed by it all. You see
Yeah.
sea turtles. The other day we had humpback whales around us.
That's awesome.
Just amazing. And you see some really cool stuff. So to be able to go out and do that in the morning, come back in and drum fish after that, or flip it around the other way, it just offers some diversity and a trip and a chance to put some meat in the box.
Yeah, definitely. Before you get too far into this, David Chalmers, just a few doors down, just commented, and he said,
Tell them to walk down here so I can
"Ray,
say,
don't
hey.
give up my secret."
And Chalmers is one that
he knows where we are right now, so we better be careful.
I got to be real careful. No, Chalmers, I'm gonna tell you, he's the man. Bottom line, he is the man. He is, like he said, he's the man that teaches the guides.
Yes,
and
he is.
He's taught me a lot, as much as anybody else ever has.
He's a great dude,
Yep.
right? Or Chalmers, if you want to in an hour when this ends, swing on by and hang out with us for a minute. But yeah, well, let's talk about tactics. Let's first off talk about what you're looking for, like when you go out there, or how you're setting up. As far as, are you starting right at the inlet? Are you looking for bait first? Are you looking for birds first? And then once you're to that area that you want to fish, like what is your setup? And let's just talk about
a normal
the numbers
day.
game first.
Yeah, numbers game, a normal day. So when I set out in the morning, it's all about wind, sea conditions. I have to plan which way can I run. I like to be able to cover ground, so I might go out the south end or the north end, depending on which way the wind's blowing, which way I can make a run easier. I can troll back into the sea, with a rougher sea, but I want to be able to make a run and cover ground and find bait, number one. So my ultimate goal is to be able to cast on big fish this time of year, but to be able to find them, you have to cover ground to find them. Most of the time, if you get in the general area, that if you've caught them that day before, but we'll approach it as you're going in for the weekend, you live somewhere else, and you come down here Saturday morning, you're going to it. Every day for me, people are like, how do you know where to go? I don't. I wake up in the morning, I look outside, and I go, okay, I might go this way. And I really sometimes don't know which way I'm going to go until 5 minutes before the trip.
You usually go both ways, don't you?
Yeah.
I'm just teasing.
No.
It was just too easy of a setup.
You got me on that one. But no, I'm definitely one way. Yeah.
All right, back into
it. All right, so yeah, poke out the inlet in the morning. All right, so you poke out, and what am I looking for? So the biggest thing I'm looking for is like anything else. Just like you're fishing for drum, trout, anything.
Yeah.
Find the bait, find the fish. That's the most important thing. You have to poke out and find the bait, number one.
Right.
So how do you find the bait? I mean, that's real particular too. You can run and look for bait schools if you just want to catch big fish. But what I do is I set out trolling gear right off the bat. I mean, why? I can cover ground at 6.2 mile an hour and look for bait, and my bottom machine's reading good, and I can see what's going on. Yeah. So what I do is I get out past the tide line usually. I'm not going to – you're going to have a little bit of dirty water right there in the inlet. Mm-hmm. That tide line is really, really important, because a lot of times all those bait fish are getting pushed out that inlet, and everything's going to stack on that tide line in that clean water. And I'll zigzag back and forth through it. Sometimes I'll run the clean side. There's days where they'll bite on the dirty side better with a gold spoon. We'll get into that later. That's not often, but it does happen. But I'm going to that tide line, number one. Bottom line, that's where I'm going to go, and that's where I'm going to start. And I'm looking on the surface of the water constantly. I'm not worried about in the boat. I put the gear out, and I'm looking at my machine. I'm looking at the horizon. I'm looking for birds. Birds, pelicans are going to be diving on bigger bait, menhaden, thread fins, the bigger stuff. And the little small glass minnows and everything that the Spanish like. Your numbers are going to be, it's going to be terns and smaller seagulls and smaller bait picking off the top. I really love those small terns that just hover and just pick. I mean, those are money. When you see them
just
lock up, when they lock up and they just stall, I'm going to catch a fish there.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to. And I'm going right to that spot.
Same type of thing you're looking for when you're fishing for false albacore.
It's the same deal. False albacore, bonita, they're all the same thing. Spanish are usually a little more widespread. The schools aren't as packed, tightly.
Yeah.
But or they are, but they'll be more. It's
stragglers all around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can catch them in between. But so what I do, I go out, I set out 3 lines of solid troll. I don't troll 5. I did for a while, and then I learned, keep moving until I find where 3 lines is too much. And I'm bailing them so fast that we're down to 2 lines.
Yeah.
Because you can't ever get that 3rd line out. As soon as you set 2,
the 3rd is your middleman that just keep getting swapped out.
It's like you put it up. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not in them that thick, I'm going to keep moving. But I go out, I find birds, I find bait by trolling, and all of a sudden what I do, it's real simple. I hit 2 fish. If I get one, I don't really mark it. If I see a bait ball and I hit one, I'll make another pass through there and see what happens. If I don't get another fish or only hit one, I keep rolling. But I note that depth of water. And so I'm going to zigzag my depth. And, I really like between 19 and 23 foot of water. That seems to be your money. The other day was 30 foot. But, every day is different.
Yeah.
And if you can, so you have to really pay attention to, okay, the bait is in, let's say, 19 foot of water. I'll make a mark. I'll do a man overboard on my machine. I'm going to make a couple passes around that, kind of feel it out. Then I'm going to keep going down that same depth, but I'm going to zigzag back and forth. And if I'm zigzagging back and forth, then all of a sudden, boom, I hit 19 foot again. I see another school of bait, and then I get a double. I'm going to mark that. And most of the time, that's how it works out. Or you'll see, okay, that was a random fish in 19. And then now I'm in 21 foot of water and I hit a double.
Yeah.
And then I'm in 21 foot of water and I hit a triple with bait. And then I hit another triple with bait on that 21 foot line. And then you run out of the fish and you turn around and come back through there. And what you'll see is you'll make 4 or 5 marks and you'll just come back. And every time you come across those marks, you're telling your clients, all right, get ready. They're coming right now. Bam, bam, bam. And it's that predictable. As soon as you see the bait, the lines come through it, you're hooked up. And so from there, each bait ball, I'll mark them as they move. Okay. So depending on which way the wind's blowing, I may, they're going to come down the beach. Usually they're rolling north this time of year. So, but they're going to stay in that same depth, which is kind of cool. So as long as you hover that 21 foot or 19 foot or whatever depth they're in, that bait's going to kind of roll down that 21 foot line. Yeah. And so that kind of keeps you in the ballpark. So what I'll do is I'll go back over the bait ball, and where I made my mark, I'll zoom in. And then I'll say, okay, well, I'm not marking them where I just marked them. What's great is when they stay, and they're on structure, and they stay where you marked them. But let's say they move 75 yards when you come back to the northeast. I mark it again, and I mark it again every time I come over them. And then all of a sudden you'll see, okay, that bait is moving in this time period, this distance. So I need to, and they're moving this way or that way. So I need to adjust my troll through that line based off of, are they moving inward or outward? And all those schools will move kind of the same way, which is kind of cool. It's easy. Definitely. But that's how that's your numbers game. Like, so if you keep running 21 foot and they're moving on an outward path, all these schools that you marked in this line, well, then you need to keep moving over with them. Yeah. And so that's how I kind of gauge how fast they're moving. Are they just kind of hovering or are they moving, rolling? Yeah. And so there's times where you'll run a mile track, in a certain area, and by the end of the trip, you're a mile and a half or 2 miles down the beach on those 3 pods of bait, still running them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You see what I'm saying? So if you've got it, if it's that mile is on your GPS here, at the end of the day, it's here. Yeah. And you're doing that same thing down here. So you have to keep making marks and keep moving with them. Keep watching the birds. And at a certain point, when the sun comes up, they'll come to the top where you can see them, and you can just watch for them on the surface and follow them.
I think that's such a cool piece of information there, because I feel like a lot of people trolling, if it's structure oriented, like you said, it doesn't matter because they're staying on the structure. But when you're not on structure and you start hitting fish on the beach, it's like, you get into that bite on the Spanish or the albies or anything like that, and you're like, keep kind of hanging out in that area, and it slows down.
But I focus more on structure. Right. And I'll stay around structure, but I'll find bait near structure. Right. And I'll do that same tactic, find out how far they're moving and try to stay on those bait. I'll mark them a few times to kind of see, okay, this is the line they're moving on. And that helps you when you lose them to intercept them again.
That's interesting.
It puts you in a place where you can zigzag and find them again. And that goes from so you'll, instead of having an hour where you're trolling in this spot and you're not picking them up again, to you're actually putting yourself in that position where those fish are again really quick. Yeah. And you're maximizing your time. When you've got 4 hours and people are paying you, it makes sense to maximize your time and pay attention to where the bait's going. And when you can't see them, with side scan on that Simrad, here's the thing. I got to say it's cheating. I do use chirp to see what I want to get over top of them. And with that chirp machine, I want to see red bait balls. I don't want to see wispy blue bait. When they're packed up tight, the menhaden and thread, the red, and you'll see blue marks off the side. That's your Spanish. Or Bonita have got a wavy mark, which is really cool. And with the side scan, I can see a football field from my boat out. I can see 150 feet. You know what I'm saying? Both sides. So I can see a bait ball. So let's say I'm looking for them again, I lose them. I can see them 100 feet to 180 feet off of the right or left of my boat, the way I've got it dialed in.
Yeah.
And you'll see this little cloud off the side. So okay, they're 180 feet over there. I can also mark it. I can 180 feet to the side or 150 feet. I can see that cloud hit. I can push my finger on that, and it puts me an X on the screen on my map where to go. I turn around, run through it, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. I mean, I'm blind without that Simrad. I'm not sponsored by them or nothing, but I've gone back to, my boat was down for a while, and I used the old school Garmin again on a couple trips, and man, it was like, oh,
that's tough.
Really?
It's even speckled trout fishing with you with that side scan, man. It's crazy what it can do for
it's fine. It helps you find bait, and it find the right kind of bait, and you'll actually see the trout on it, which is cool. Doesn't mean they're going to bite, but you'll see them. But finding the bait for trout fishing, it's a huge deal. Yeah.
That's interesting too, because I've been fishing for Spanish since I was a kid, and it's always mainly just a few times a year, but it's always just all right, let's take the boat out and go to the inlet, troll around.
Well, and that's what's cool about it. But you can, and you can wander aimlessly, and you'll catch them. But if you want to get numbers and really dial them in, you got to use your electronics. You got to use your eyes and look. I mean, if you just used your eyes, the birds will actually give you more information than what the Simrad does some days.
Some days, definitely.
I mean, so I have to watch constantly. Yeah. I mean, I want to see what's going on. I'm constantly watching. I'm watching 360 degrees nonstop around, like you're in a dove field looking for a dove. Coming to you. It's that same thing.
It can happen anywhere.
You're kind of like, okay, then make sure they're not over there. Make sure they're not. Yeah. I mean,
it's cool just because I've also been out when you don't catch anything, but you know that they're there.
They can be tough sometimes, man. They really can be tough.
Yeah.
But, that's an interesting way to do it.
It really is.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So when I set out, obviously I'm gonna troll first. I set up my basic setup as a number 2 planer. I like to get a number 2 close to the boat. I'll put a number 1 midway out. And then I've got what they call a meat rig on top. Don't overthink it. Do it just like a Carolina rig, but with a longer leader. I'll use a barrel weight with a bunch of swivels on it. Good swivels are your friend in this game. If you use cheap swivels, you're constantly having tangles and knots and whatnot. But basic setup is a Clark spoon tied on with... I use 30-pound mono. If it's real tough and they're not wanting to bite and the water's super clear, I'll go down to 20-pound fluorocarbon at times. Yeah. I try not to do that often because it's expensive and it's not necessary. But there's times where I've gone from catching 1 to 3 at a time by going to 20-pound fluorocarbon. Yeah. Very, very random on that one, but it's water clarity. You got to look at if it's super clear and it's super sunny and it's really tough, I will switch up on one line to 20-pound fluorocarbon and just see what happens. And but I'm also, I'm marking stuff. If I see a mark and I see what I want to see, a red ball of bait, and I know there's Spanish around it, and I pull through it and I don't get anything, and I hit 2 more schools and I don't get anything, that's, 20 minutes into the ball game in the morning. So you find your bait, find your fish, you're marking bait. Let's say they're not biting. Okay, what do? Well, that's where you've got to change your colors. So my basic setup is a number 2 planer, number 1 planer, meat rig on top. Meat rig is just a barrel weight and I run 24 foot leaders. I pull off 4 or 5 arm lengths. Yeah. So whatever that is for me, you can measure me at the end of this. We can give them a definite, but 4 or 5 arm lengths. Buddy asked me the other day, he said, "How tall are you?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, it's on your license." I said, "Well, they never measured me. They just asked, So whatever that is, right. 4 or 5 of those, that's what I do.
Gotcha.
30-pound mono or 20. And fluorocarbon when it's tough. I'll get it. You'll get bite offs on 20 pound, but it makes a difference some days. And when people are paying you, you got to do what you got to do to put fish in the boat. So Clark spoons, different sizes. I use them all. I use aught, double aught, size 1. Those are my normal. I like to run a big pink down close on the number 2, and I'll stagger them. So if you're looking at the back of the boat, okay, so let's just say you're looking at me right now, and I'm looking off the back of my boat as I'm traveling forward, and I'm going to set my lines out. I'm going to set a number 2 off the port side, and I'm going to set it close, like right in the prop wash to start with. And
how many feet back from the stern of the boat you think that is?
From the stern of the boat, probably, judging distance.
It's hard to tell with that angle and everything.
It's hard to tell with that angle, but let's just say 50 feet.
Okay.
Cool. And then, my one might be 60, 70 yards back. I don't think it's that far. My meat rig, I wouldn't say it's that far back. Sometimes I run it way back.
Yeah.
When the water's clear, sometimes I'm running everything back farther. But you have to remember with planers, the farther you run them back, the deeper they're going to go.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I will switch up on days where they're biting up to two number 1 planers. So I like that number 2 because it's going down deeper, but I'm not running it so far back that it's really down deep. So I'm never really fishing super deep for them. So I got it close to the boat with I usually run a big pink on that. That's I call it my picture fish rig. You tend to catch the bigger fish on that, closer to the boat on that number 2. And those are the fish that are nice, and those are I call it's the picture rig.
Yeah.
It always produces the bigger fish. Not always, but most of the time. On my number 1, I'm going to go on the starboard side, and I'll put a number 1 out, and I want it about twice as far out as that one is. So I'm going to run it 100 feet back or 75 feet back. Now, so what you end up with is you've got a 2 pull in here, a 1 pull in here, and then a meat rig here. So you've got you're covering the water column.
Yeah.
1, 2, with 3 lines. If you want to put out 2 lines on the outside of that, you can. Put a mackerel tree up top, kind of midway, not as far back as your meat rig, but midway back off. If you got some outriggers or something, run one out. That's a good trick. Those Spanish trees, man, those things are killer.
So little small squids, little train of small squids.
Yeah, or tubes, surgical tube, and they make them a different. Now, I don't use them, and I'll tell you why I don't use them, because they work too good. Now, that might sound stupid coming from a charter captain, but when you talk about a fish that is coming over the side of the boat with the sharpest teeth and can cut you. Now, let's say you got 4 of them on. The first time I used one, I caught 4 fish on it. And I was like, okay, this is cool. But then I had 4 flopping sets of teeth and 2 swinging hooks doing this number. And I said,
swinging them into the gunnel trying to.
And that was not, for me, I was like, let me just stick to 1 Clark spoon and it's safe. Yeah. And I can bail them over just as quick with that. But those things do work. So if you're out there by yourself and you got time and you're not on a crunch with a charter and you have to keep slinging fish to to make sure they get enough fish, those things are awesome. Yeah. And they did work a few times when nothing else was. But I run.
Do you mostly fish those on the surface, or are you putting a weight?
No, I run them on a number 1 planer.
Oh, on a number 1 planer.
And I will fish them on the surface too. Yeah. But you can fish them however. Put them on. So far, number 1 planer this year has been working great with them. And I did use them a couple times when fishing was slow, and ended up catching a triple on the thing and couldn't get anything on the 2 Clark spoons. So I will say that they have their moment.
But if you don't want to catch too many fish, don't use them.
It's dangerous. I mean, it's just bottom line, be careful. And if you're going to fish those things, wear a glove. I mean, be careful with it, because it's a lot of sharp, pointy things coming at you at one time.
How many hooks does it have on it?
I think it's 4 or 5. I've only used it a few times.
And it's just a string. I've never even seen one of these things.
Yeah, it's just a
string of squids.
They're all in line. Yeah, I guess like there's surgical tubing ones and whatnot. But yeah, it just looks like a little string of bait fish.
I started to bring one, but yeah, either way. But my 2 go-tos right now are Clark spoons. You can't beat a Clark spoon in a planer.
Yeah.
And if I'm casting, I've strictly Big Nick's jigs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. I mean, that's all I carry anymore. Sure. I mean, because they work.
Yeah.
And diamond jigs. I carried a lot of stuff forever, and that's all I use now. But yeah, I'm trolling around. I'm looking for bait. I'm making a lot of marks when I catch fish, and I'm hitting those marks again. And what you'll find is if you keep going over those marks where you hit fish, you're going to boom, 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 boom. You're going to get a triple, a double, a triple, a double, a triple. Instead of just randomly driving around, caught one, caught one. You're going to be boom, 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 boom. You're going to be putting numbers in real quick like that. And that is all it is. That's the only trick. And I only run 3 lines. And if I'm not in the fish thick enough where I've got to run 5, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Or they're just not feeding. And that's when but I'm constantly changing colors. If you're in dirty water, if the water's a little dirty, go to those gold Clark spoons. And I like to run 3 different sizes. I usually put a big one down, mid-size in the mid column, and a small one up top. Now, if I find they're mainly feeding up top, I'm going to switch my number 2 planer to a number 1 and run 2 number 1s, but you stagger them so that when you turn, you cannot have them out the same distance, or when you turn, they're gonna bump. If you put one in close and one out far, they will be different depths.
Yeah.
And
swing across each other.
And they'll swing across. Everything will do this right here, just like. And you can turn. I can turn on a dime and not tangle up.
Yeah.
When the conditions are a little rougher, you need to put a lot more distance between everything because they will still tangle. But most of the time, it's not a problem at all. But so if I'm going through bait and I'm not hitting them, I'm going to change up to a green, chartreuse, pink, different sizes on. So if it's just a tough day, I'm pulling in my meat rig. I'm putting a big one up top. I'm putting a gold one up top, big and small. Every few minutes I'll pull them in, and I'm changing my color on all 3 depths to see. And it won't take you long. All of a sudden, there's been a lot of days where, the day before it was dirty water and we're running golds, and that's all we were catching them on. You go back out the next day and it cleans up a little bit, but it's still kind of dirty looking to you. And you're running golds, nothing, and you put 1 pink on, boom.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me throw one on that. Do your doubles, let me throw one up top, and then you're tripled up.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to change constantly. You can't just be complacent, And like I said, when I didn't charter and I just fished for fun, it was a different story. I'd just go out there and just pull them around and whatever.
Yeah.
But when you've got people on the boat and they're paying you to catch a fish, you got to be busy and you got to be changing up and you got to be figuring them out. And my first couple of years,
high pressure.
Well, I mean, really, high pressure is what challenged me to figure all that out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was. I mean, I was kind of a lazy fisherman, Spanish fishing back then. It was enjoyable. Let's just go out there and cruise. And I can go out there and catch 4 or 5, just cruising around, not caring, knowing I could catch 50 if I just changed it up by myself. But I'm just riding, looking for bait on my days off sometimes to see where the bait is, see what's going on. And, because I don't want to go out there and bail them nonstop. I want to break. But
you want to just check on them.
But I've had days where it's like you're frustrated and you've got people looking at you like, oh, you just killed them yesterday. What's up? And so I'm pulling them in. I'm changing. And, that's stuff. And to give credit to Captain John Millett. I mean, I made it for him my first couple of years of chartering. He was nice enough to allow me to mate on my days off. And a lot of that, that I do now, even inshore fishing, a lot of it, like in the charter realm, came from him. I mean, that guy, he's amazing. I mean, if something ain't working, he's back there. Okay, change this, do this, put this on. And the constant changing for your clients and working hard for them, I learned that from him. I'd never been on a charter in my life, and I started a charter business.
Yeah,
I didn't know what to do. John taught me. So
that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about casting. Do you always, or do you only really cast when you see the fish on the surface, or are you casting and letting it sink on those bait balls and jigging it all?
So, kind of both. The nature of the business dictates how you fish. Yeah. Fortunately and unfortunately. So there's times where I'm going to just troll to get numbers in the boat because that's what they want. Mm-hmm. I had some clients the other day that have gone with me quite a bit, and I love them. And they're like, we don't want to troll, we want to cast. And I was like, all right, that's cool.
Dang it.
And they did not want to troll. So I like trolling to find them. I said, well, let's troll to find them and mark the bait, and let me get them dialed in. And they're like, we don't want to troll. And I said, all right, this will be fun. And I was digging it. Because that's how I'm going to fish, I'm usually casting to them or throwing a fly rod at them if I'm out there on my day off. But I said, okay, let's do that. And so we rode around for about 20 minutes, and I marked the bait and found them. And I went ahead and made my marks without catching any fish trolling, because I was just, but it was flat, it was calm, it was pretty. And I marked a few schools of bait, and they weren't up yet. We didn't have any bait on the surface. And I got in that line, and I set adrift, and I shut the motor off and shut everything off so we could be quiet. And we drifted through the bait balls, which were about 15 foot down. And we killed it. That was one of the pictures that I sent you. It was, casting. And so we ran that line, and it was every 2 or 3 minutes we had a fish, just casting to them. And
not on the surface, letting them sink down and working it back.
No, just bring them across the surface. And doing a little bit of both. I said vary or retrieve every cast until we figure them out.
Yeah.
And all of us were casting, and we would let them sink, and then what we found is just burn them across the top, normal.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. We started pecking at them. And then from there, I said, all right, well, we had 25 in the boat, I think. I said, let's cover some ground and let's find a bait ball. And that was getting towards afternoon. And so we went north, and I went looking for bait balls. We ran about 4 miles and ran up on the Holy Grail. Dart, bait ball, big bird, the pelicans diving on them, little birds on the edge. It was on.
It was what you wanted.
And so when you're doing that, all right, talking about casting, you don't bust up into the middle of it.
Right.
You stay off it for a while and you watch it. I like to be on the upwind side of it, and what I do is back troll. I get upwind from it. So let's say you got a southwest wind, which is dynamite. This day we actually had a northwest wind. So, and I don't get many great days on a northwest like this, usually a southwest wind when they're feeding like that. But bottom line is, if the bait school's here and the wind's blowing this way, you want to be up on this side of them. So when you talk about, boat handling and trying to control a boat and where the pivot point of a boat is, you don't want your boat pointing straight into the wind. As soon as the wind blows you, you're this way, you're that way. Where if you just go upwind from them and put your boat in reverse, it'll hold you just up from the school, out of casting distance, because you don't want people casting in the school, snagging the bait constantly. But it'll hold you right there, and all you've got to do, as the bait moves down the bank, just turn your wheel to the right a little bit, and the boat will just kind of cruise and just hover. And you just take it out of reverse if they get out of range, and ease up there, bump it back in reverse, and that holds you upwind from the school. And I stay a good cast distance away from them. If you run into them, you screw up the whole thing. Like, all that's going down, Mother Nature is doing her thing. Leave it alone. Stay away from it. Do not run through it. I will troll around the edge of a school and pull my baits kind of off the edge. But that's where talking about the big fish, that's where the big fish come from, is casting into the bait balls of big bait. Because they're feeding on that big bait. And one thing you can do is snag them in, Hayden, pull them off the edge of the school, and you'll watch them right under the surface, and pow, you see those big ones come up and hammer it. And you can pick big fish off like that. A better way to do it is to snag one, pull him to the boat, hook him on a piece of metal, copper wire with because you get a lot of cutoffs like that with those big fish. They'll hit your lure and cut it off. So I like to bring them in, put them on a piece of metal, chunk them back out, and then hook them up that way. But most of the time, just throw them Spanish candies right on the edge of the school and burn them, and those big fish are going to pick it up right off the edge of the school. Yeah. And I'll work the upwind and downwind side. But we sat there for, I think, 4 hours straight that day. And it was every cast for 4 hours non-stop on one school bait.
That's fun.
And literally I had 3. I
bet your boat was disgusting.
Oh, it's it's nasty.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there with the watch.
You got a wash down.
There was a point where I backed it off, and the guys were like, "I think you're a little too far back," and I said, "I know I am. I need a break. Give me a second." And they just laughed. I said, "We've been doing 3 at a time for an hour and a half." I said, "Give me a second. Let me hose this thing down." I said, "Let's get everything ironed out, and we'll go back to it." But and I had to count fish too. We were getting, I knew we were close to a limit, and I said, let me make sure we're legal.
That's sweet.
But that's if you bust through them though, you mess up that whole natural thing that's going on. You screw it up.
Yeah.
And it's over with.
I see people do that all the time. False albacore fishing is getting super close to that school of bait and then gone.
Yeah.
We just had a question come in. It said, Ray, any concern pulling the number 1 planer right next to the pink spoon on the number 2 planer?
No, I mean number 2 and number 1, you don't run them. No, you don't run them right next to each other. So when I was showing this, I'm trying to show these are my lines coming off the back of the boat. They're not. They're staggered.
Yeah. One.
So my number 2, let's say I'm the back of the boat. My number 2's here. My number 1 is way out here. And then my meat rig is way out here. So not only are you staggering them by depth that they'll run, you're also staggering them by distance from the back of the boat.
Yeah.
And you will have 0 problems.
Your meat rig is
It's on top. It's on top, down the middle. And I run.
That's on a trolling weight, you said?
Yeah, I run the meat rig on the same side as my short.
Okay.
I don't run my meat rig. Okay, so I've got my number 2 here, my number 1 here. The meat rig's going to go over the number 2.
Okay.
Because if that number 1 pops up, it will come up. You'll hook a fish. It'll go up into that line from the number 1.
Gotcha.
Or the meat rig. Mm-hmm. That line's dangling down in the water, and it'll wrap around that sometimes. So I like to keep that. That is important, actually. I like to keep that meat rig over top of my number 2. So when that number 2 pops, it's so close to the boat that it doesn't matter.
It's out of play.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing to think about is the rods that you're using to troll. Is there a specific setup that you like to use when trolling for Spanish?
Yeah, I mean I like
the reels.
The TLD 15s. I like lever drags for planers.
Yeah,
hands down, those are probably the best reel in my opinion ever made. Even I'm using top of the line stuff for trout fishing. Shimano CI4 pluses, and they're a headache. They're the best thing in my opinion out there, but they're the biggest headache. I mean, with the washers you've got to replace, and the bearings in the line roller bearings, constantly replacing those. But the TLD 15s are like the old school pins in my opinion, where they just work and work and work and work. The harder I beat them, the more they just work the same all the time. So I run 2 TLD 15s, and I've got a Speedmaster with just a regular lever for my meat rig. I like to just pop that. But with the planers, just trust me on this. Get a TLD 15. I run 20-pound mono, and that's I can run that for king mackerel, live baiting too.
Yeah. Dual
purpose setup. But the nice thing about the lever drag is you just push it back, and you can set your planer and set it back easily and put it. And I like to set it where that planer will pull off just a hair line if I'm running too fast. So when you're back there working on the back nonstop, I can't watch the machine. I'm just looking backwards, bailing fish. If I start seeing my number 2 pulling a little line off where I've got it set, I know I'm running too fast. I'll reach back and I'll pop the throttle back just a hair, and I'll be like, okay, I'm at 7 knots instead of 5. I like to run 5.5 to 6.2.
Okay, sweet. That's
6.2 being my magic number for me.
6.2. Yeah. I think I was getting him at like 5.6 the other day. It was pretty good. I was
5.5 was good the other day for me.
5.5 was good the other day for you.
For some reason. I mean, I was catching big fish at 5.5 the other day. All big fish.
So if you've got people that can't cast, and all of a sudden you're catching them on the planer, but all of a sudden the fish are on the surface. Mm-hmm. What's your setup that you switch to if you're just going to troll to them?
What do you mean?
Are you going to pull the planers out and just throw
if they're coming up on top where we can cast to them?
But I'm saying if you got guys that can't cast,
right?
And it's going to be a headache. Do you swap it up, or do you still keep trolling the same thing?
No, they're gonna learn to cast.
They're going to learn to cast. I like it.
Casting lessons are going down, and I very rarely have it where when you have that kind of mayhem going on,
you can't hook them.
People tend to learn really quick when that's happening. Especially
I've
if you
had
throw
some days
out
though, man, where it's like, oh man, you got to get the jig out there a little bit.
I think, it was one of my first charter experiences where I took somebody out and they casted a top water plug and it went straight in the air and come down and landed right on my head and hooked me in the head. That was like one of my first trips, my first week of charter.
I love this job.
Was a hook in the head, and I said, and I remember just grabbing the pliers and just yanking. And I said, all right, well, let's regroup here. And we sat up there, and I've never had anybody that I couldn't in 30 minutes or so have them casting somewhat proficiently. And with Spanish, when they're on like that, when I'm going to cast to them, you don't have to be the best caster.
You don't have to be a good caster.
I mean, you just get it out there and crank as fast as you can. It's not like working the trout lure where all you have to do is cast and pull as fast as you can. That's it. And where trout fishing, you've got to work a shrimp this way or a mirror lure this way.
And still keep tension so you can feel the bite.
Yeah.
You might have been eaten 5 times and you have no clue.
It's not as critical.
Yeah.
It's not as critical.
Yeah. Well, cool. Let's talk a little bit about fly fishing. We got a bunch of people that like fly fishing on here, and it's a fun way to catch them too. And you can catch them when they're not on the surface on a fly rod with sinking line, which is still fun. But for me, it's like if they're not on the surface, I'm probably not going to throw the fly rod to them. And it's a great way to go out with clients that. I mean, a lot of times what I do is I'll bring my guys that really want to get into saltwater fishing, but they might not have quite what it takes to go sight fish to redfish.
Yeah.
And you can get them out there if they can throw it, 25, 30 feet. You can usually get a couple Spanish mackerel and clouser minnows. I usually use 30-pound fluorocarbon for my leader there, and you'll wear through it a little bit after a few fish, but because those clousers are just so little. When you fly fish for them, what's your setup you like to run?
I'm kind of new to the game with fly fishing. Buddy Mike got me into it, set me up, helped me out. Mike Upgard.
Yeah.
Mike? And it was one I didn't want to get in the middle of. I knew it was going to be money. But no, I originally got into fly fishing just so I could cast a certain type of lure to trout in August in the river on top water. Yeah. That's why I started it. And then I wanted to, and Andy Boyd, we had caught a bunch of trout one morning and went out fly fishing for false albacore. We had already had a limited trout. We went out and he had a 5-weight in the boat and we caught a bunch of false albacore, and that ruined me that day. I mean, laying it down there, stripping it, watching a false albacore hit it by the boat on a 5-weight, a big one, and peeling it off.
Gosh, on a 5-weight.
It ruined me. I mean, it did. It ruined me, and it was really cool. And so, I mean, the next week I was buying fly rods, but I've just got my setup for drum. I've got an 8-weight. I've got a few 8-weights that I use for everything. I'm not a fly fisherman per se. I love it, but I do it a lot by myself. But for Spanish, I just run a pink and yellow clouser. I tie them up, just simple clouser. I don't get too crazy with it. I use floating line. I've got one with sinking line. Yeah. And I do I think, 40, 30, 20.
Yeah. To taper it.
Yeah, 40, and then
You're more dedicated than I am. I don't even tie taper leaders.
But I mean, I said, "What do you do, Mike?" He said, "Do 40, 30, 20." Yeah. I was like, "That's it." He's like, "Don't overthink it," and that was it. And so I just blood knot them together. Yeah. I do a 20-pound on the end with a clouser and put it out there and strip it as fast as you can. And there are days where that fly is killer. I mean, just like with trout fishing. It's got its moment when nothing else works. That works. Yeah.
I see the retrieve on a fly, especially clouser minnow, gets bites when a lot of other stuff doesn't. Like when I was just up in Weldon and the fish are shut down, you're marking thousands of them on your screen, and you throw a fly rod in there. Like I'll have guys that are fishing jigs and you can't get that. Yeah. And you throw a fly rod in there and it's like first cast fish on.
Well, you got to have the conditions. It's got to have the conditions. And we haven't had that this year. We've had 30-knot winds constantly every day for months. But I've carried the fly rod just about every trip. We just hadn't been able to have not been able to use it. But as far as casting goes with the other things too, I will say don't forget the old school gotcha plug. I don't use them much anymore. Big Nicks, the old school diamond jigs have their place as well because they're heavier. Yeah, you can throw them farther. They sink faster. So when I'm in a school of Menhaden, if there's times where the Big Nicks kind of ride the top. He's got heavier ones, but I tend to use one size that I really like and certain colors that I really like. But those diamond jigs will sink down super fast. They'll shoot right through the school, and then you can start ripping them. So those diamond jigs are killer sometimes, and then the epoxy jigs. Yeah, epoxy jigs. If you can find those, they're hard to find now, but they've got that shimmer to them and that lifelike look.
They look so much like a bait fish.
That does give you an advantage. Light, though. Certain days, and that's the thing. Yeah. They ride the top better. So, and the other thing that I will use is a regular blue water candy head and a clear or blue clear grub. Yeah, when they're real finicky. And that tends to be like when you catch them on a fly, and a fly's working better than anything else.
That's a good backup.
And if you got guys that just want to cast, you better have all that stuff, and you better make sure it's handy.
Yeah, on the trips that I've run, just fly fishing trips for Spanish, I make sure I throw a sinking line in there too, because you'll get out there some days, and yesterday they were on the surface like crazy, and then you get out there the next day and there's not a single fish on the surface. And if you can mark those schools, and the rough kind of estimate I give people, you can, when you buy sinking line, it's going to tell you how quickly that line will sink, like X amount of inches or feet per second. But I always just tell people, just go an inch a second. You're down where you need to be. And if you're marking that bait, like Ray was saying, you can set up a drift to drift through those fish and throw that fly line out off the side of the boat, count it down, strip it in. You can catch fish just like that without them being on the surface. And I've had to do that before. Obviously, the casting to the blitzing fish on the surface makes it a lot more fun. But if you're really dedicated to go out there and try to catch some Spanish and some big Spanish on the fly rod, that's a great way to do it, is with the sinking line. Look over here and see if we have more questions. Brian Saunders just said, have y'all ever trolled a saltwater umbrella rig for Spanish? It's a freaking killer. Blue Water Candy has them.
Yes, they are great.
They are great?
Yeah, they are great.
It's like another headache once you get them in the boat.
It's another one of those, they work too good. So, yeah, check them out. Like, if you want, for real. Especially, I put stuff like that on slow days.
Yeah.
When it's really tough, I'm putting out those umbrella. I just started using the umbrella rig this year.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how it did, and we had 4 fish.
Fish on it at once.
Yeah, I was like, no, I can't do this. So, they work. Try them. Blue Water Candy is good.
On a planer as well?
Yeah, you can run it on a planer or run it on top. The umbrella rigs, I run up top, just behind a little bit of weight, just let it work on the top. I haven't tried it. It'll probably work fine behind a planer. I don't know if it'll trip. I didn't even try it behind a planer. It'll probably work fine. They're so new to me. And like I said, the ones, what do they call them, the trees, Spanish mackerel trees, those I run behind a number 1 planer or up top, or number 2 planer. I'll put them on my planers with my leader, and some of them you can put a Clark spoon behind. Actually all of them you can, but you still run the Clark spoon behind it. But yeah, it's mayhem on those things. Like, just if you're out there fishing by yourself, that's not a problem, but that's like bringing some kind of
bull into a china shop.
It's like bringing a mass of razor blades over the back of the boat. You got to stick your hand.
They're flying around everywhere,
flying around all over the place. Yeah,
that sounds fun, but it'd be a little hectic.
Yeah,
a little hectic if you're the only one doing it. Umbrella rigs, I'm going to try that. So I don't know if I should say this, because I don't want anyone to beat me to this. But my goal for this fall trout fishing is I want to catch a limit of trout on one cast with an umbrella rig. When they're really thick, I want to see if I can get 4 legal trout on an umbrella rig.
If we get them like we had last year, it might work.
I mean, you can knock out some trips. 8 a day, we're going to catch our limit.
Yep.
But I think that would be cool. And I want to do it for real. You could easily stage it.
Cast? I feel like they would be kind of.
You really need a bait caster for them, like a heavier bait caster. It'd be real. And there's one. There's another one. Just kind of load them up. But,
I think another one. I think another one that I used to run, but I don't run a lot, but that worked really well, that we didn't mention, Yoser deep divers.
Yoser deep divers,
yeah. Don't forget those. I don't run them anymore because they are expensive, and there are other things that catch them just as well, for a quarter of the price. But I used to troll Yoser deep divers and cast Yoser deep divers. I love casting them and pulling them. If I'm casting, I love to cast them and pull them as fast as I can, because those things do work. But the problem,
you get a lot of kings on those too. A lot of times
you do. The problem with Yoser deep divers and trying to run planers with Yoseris, and you're running them in conjunction, you will have a lot of tangles if you're not real careful on how you set them. So for me, and then you've got the treble factor of 2 treble hooks and teeth.
Yeah.
So I'm old school. I keep it simple. I want 1 hook. I can sling that fish over, pop him off, pop that hook out in the box, sling the Clark spoon off the side, reset, boom, fish on again.
Yeah.
I'm not spending. And when you're talking about 75 fish in a few hours, 2 treble hooks are 3 fish.
It's going to slow you down.
That's it.
Definitely.
And you're talking about numbers. Yeah. 2 treble hooks and having to get pliers instead of just boom, boom, boom. It's set.
With the de-hooker too and the Clark spoon, it is the easiest bait to de-hook.
Yeah, I don't even use a de-hooker.
Just grab the spoon and pop it.
I grab the line, grab behind the head, be careful, get him out and go. I mean,
I just hate those the Spanish scales on my.
Oh no, man! If you ain't got your hands all looking like a monster, you ain't in the fish.
Well, is there anything else you think? Sorry guys, if y'all can hear my dog barking. He's angry at somebody apparently. But is there anything else you can think of that we need to touch on as far as Spanish fishing goes?
I think we got it covered.
We had let's see. You just touched it. Let's talk one more thing. Deep divers. Are there colors if you're going to run a deep diver that you prefer?
I've caught it. I mean, I like the pink, so I like the black and those darker back ones. I don't really get too crazy with it. There was a green back that did well, blue back. But it's kind of like pink and chartreuse, pink, white. Anything that looks natural, like a glass minnow with the green back, with the lighter bottom, black back with lighter bottom. I've got a plethora of them that I use, and I think the best I've ever done was like a darker black back with a lighter bottom.
Gotcha.
That's probably my best day I've ever had on them was with that one.
Yeah.
Between that and the pink.
Those deep divers they're a great bait, but like you're saying, the trebles, that's just when you're
trebles an expense when other things work just as good for a quarter of the price.
Definitely.
With a single hook, I'd prefer, and I haven't even tried putting a single hook on a Yo-Zuri and just fishing them that way. I think I'll do that. I think I'm going to put a single hook on the back of a Yo-Zuri deep diver for casting and give it a shot, and I think I'll love them if that works.
Yeah, definitely.
And I hadn't even really thought of that until we started talking about it. But
see, there we go, learning stuff tonight.
There
was one more question I read that I forgot to say. Do you like to keep the trebles on the big Nicks jigs and your casting jigs, or do you switch them over to single hooks?
I just use the trebles because he uses really good hooks.
Yeah,
and they don't bend. You can really wrench on them with the pliers. I don't like trebles in that when you're bailing them that fast. I would be better to have. I mean, the other day we could have used barbless J hooks and it would have been a lot better. But when you've already got a limit in the boat and you're casting for fun, switch up to some single hooks so you're not damaging the fish and that kind of thing. But
their faces are fragile. Like if you're letting them go, and you can mess them up pretty bad.
So talking about conservation, switch up to a J on them.
Yeah.
I do carry J's. I've got some with J hooks, but if there's not a limit in the boat, trebles are gonna be what's on there. I haven't found where a J hook hooks them better, or I typically like a J hook way better than a treble. I'm not a fan of treble hooks at all. But on those, the way they hit and they're slapping the back of it, you usually get them really good with a treble.
For sure. Well, cool. Well, I think that's it, you guys, as far as Spanish. If you can't go catch a few Spanish after that, I don't know if you're ever going to catch it. Or you might be fishing freshwater ponds. But, well, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in. We're I think it froze up for a second, it looked like. But thanks for sticking with us, and we apologize for any glitches y'all might have seen. And tell your friends and family about Eastern Current. If you did really like this, one thing you can do that helps us a ton is just share it on your Facebook page right now, and that just helps other people find it and check it out. And if you want to book a trip with Ray to go smack the Spanish mackerel right in the face, how can they do that?
If you want to learn how to set a planer and see how all these things go. I mean, I was going to bring a planer and try to explain that online, but
you could have been in Spanish.
If you want to see that, call me, book a trip. I'll show you real quick.
What's your website?
I do Facebook and Instagram. Still working on the website.
We'll get you up there.
Sam Johns. Talk to my man Sam Johns. Tighten up, buddy. Shout out to Sam and Raleigh. I do Facebook and Instagram. It's Springtide Guide Service on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, cool. Yep. Perfect. And Cameron, stoked to be doing this again together. That was a fist bump right above the mic. That's going to sound really cool on the podcast. But you guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will see y'all next week. Later.
All right.